Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Citizen Zenshin Super Titanium reference AW0130-85A. This watch is widely available from your local Citizen stockist and from the official brand website citizenwatch.ie for €499. The watch is available in three colour options: textured white, textured blue and textured green respectively. Of the three colour options, I think this textured white version is the best looking. Citizen were the first watch brand to make a titanium watch in 1970, and this piece, the Zenshin Super Titanium, is entirely made from Forza Super Titanium. The benefit of that is it is 5 times harder and 40% lighter than 316L grade stainless steel. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a watch box which is housed inside this outer black cardboard box. On the lid we have the Citizen logo in silver and also on the front of the flap. So I'll take out the watch box and show it to you. Cardboard watch box in the form of a cylinder. On the lid we have the Citizen logo and also on the edge of the base, so very aesthetically pleasing. Matte grained finish to it, very aesthetically pleasing. Now, subjectively one can be critical of this because it is €499, therefore we are at the upper end of the low tier between €0 and €500, and I would prefer to see a plastic watch box or alternatively a vinyl or PU leather coated watch box because I think that would better match the price point of the piece. But on the other hand, one can give credit to Citizen because they are using recyclable materials which are sustainable. So on the base they are very proud of that, and it says proudly made with recyclable paper, and we've also got the recyclable logo. So they deserve credit for being conscientious and using recyclable materials which are environmentally friendly, although I would prefer higher quality watch box at this price point. So I remove the lid, and inside there's this protective block of foam which does a good job of protecting the watch in shipping. The base interior is fully upholstered with contrasting grey velour fabric to good standard. There's a cutout in the base which houses this piece of flexible metal which is also upholstered with contrasting grey velour fabric. It's a snug fit in the cutout, good presentation, and also does a good job of protecting the watch in shipping from any damage. So although basic, it does suffice, but I think there is room for improvement. With regards to items that come with the piece, it comes with this fold-out leaflet, which is the guarantee and watch care information leaflet. So when you open it, on the left-hand portion, there's space to fill in the serial number of the piece, and it also invites you to register your watch online, citizenwatch.ie/register your watch. So you simply register your serial number of the watch online, and that will activate the 5-year international warranty from the date of purchase. Now, for purchase outside the territory, it is covered by a 1-year international guarantee, and you simply register the watch on citizenwatch.ie/guarantee. Now, on the right-hand portion, there's space to fill in the case number, which is the serial number of the piece, the manufacturer's number, model number, date of purchase, retailer's name and address, country and owner's name. I want to give due credit to Citizen here because it is unusual to see 5 years of international warranty on a low tier piece between €0 and €500. So to clarify, low tier pieces between €0 and €500 are usually covered by a 12-month international guarantee. Mid tier pieces between €500 and €5,000 respectively are usually covered by the industry standard 2 years of international warranty. High tier pieces at €10,000 plus, such as Rolex, usually come with a 5-year international warranty, but at €499 it is exceptional to see a low tier piece with 5 years of international warranty. It does add value to the piece, and Citizen deserve full credit for that. So inside we have the Citizen Watch Care Guide, which effectively is the owner's instruction manual. Clear concise diagrams, the instructions are in English, and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Citizen Calibre J800 Eco Drive. And lastly, one also gets this cardboard tag, which is branded with Citizen. On the reverse, it has the reference number for the piece and also the calibre, which is the Citizen Calibre J800 Eco Drive. There's also a QR code, which can be scanned with your Android or iPhone to download information about the piece and also the full barcode of the piece. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 39.5mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 41.9mm, a thickness of 10.1mm, and an internal lug width on the integrated bracelet of 11.9mm. The integrated bracelet is flared and tapered. At its widest point it is 23.7mm, tapering down to 20mm at the 2-button push clasp. 2-button push clasp is made from Forza titanium and signed with high definition engraving with the Citizen logo. Two pushers are correctly proportioned, deburred well, no sharp edges, and we simply have two micro adjustment holes drilled into the flanks. I'd like to see a longer clasp used in the absence of half links in the bracelet and a micro adjustment clasp. I think it would be beneficial to have a longer clasp with 4 or 5 micro adjustment holes. 2 micro adjustment holes really is the bare minimum because it doesn't give a half link of adjustment. So this could also be further enhanced if they added a half link on the 6 and a half link on the 12 o'clock side of the bracelet, because sometimes adding or subtracting one full link from an integrated bracelet doesn't give the desired fit. It either feels slightly too tight or too loose, but having a micro adjustment clasp or alternatively a longer clasp with 5 micro adjustment holes would be beneficial. We have a flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished applied indices and the silver mirror polished pencil handset. Handset is correctly proportioned. I like that the hour hand is wider and the minute hand is more slender, so one can immediately differentiate between the shorter and wider hour hand and the longer and thinner minute hand. Minute hand is long enough to extend to the applied indices and nearly to the black minute ticks on the chaptering, so that's good. Second hand extends nearly to the minute ticks on the chaptering, and the hour hand extends to the applied indices. So they've got the proportions of the handset correct. So as I've detailed, this Zenshin Super Titanium is available in 3 dial colours: textured white, textured blue and textured green respectively. Of the 3 colour options, I think this textured white version is the best looking. Now, it is a textured dial, but it's not matte. That's something to note. It actually has a silver sheen to it. So it's not as shiny and reflective as a white or silver sunray dial, and it's not as shiny and reflective as a glossy enamel dial, but it does have a reflective property. So although it's textured, it does have a white tone to it, which also has a silver sheen to the white, and it is very aesthetically pleasing. Black minute ticks are printed with high definition crisp printing on the chaptering. They're also correctly proportioned. We've got larger squares or rectangles next to the applied indices for the hour marks, and then the black minute ticks are large enough to be clearly legible. What I like about the dial is it's not over-branded with unnecessary text or specification, because we simply have the Citizen logo at 12, which is high definition and crisp. The font is clearly legible, and 2 lines of text at 6 o'clock, Eco Drive Titanium. Just the right amount of information. For example, they haven't printed the water resistance rating, which is 100 metres. That is negligible for a daily wear piece, because we're not looking at a dive piece. We don't need to know that it's 100 metres. It's also engraved into the case back, which does suffice. But I like it. Eco Drive Titanium makes it look clean. The dial looks balanced. I like the double applied indices at 12 o'clock and the single indices for the other hour marks. Also, the day-date complication has good framing to it. As you can see, there's a bevel on the edge of the framing, and this is good. The bevel is beneficial, and I'll explain why. Often Eco Drive pieces have a thick dial because, of course, they're solar powered. But the negative of that is when you have a date complication or a day-date complication in this case, when the cutout in the thick Eco Drive dial is made, the problem is it casts a permanent shadow due to the thickness of the dial, creating a permanent shadow around the aperture. And this is negative because the problem is it casts a shadow on the date and the day complication. But in this case, it's not a problem because they've beveled the cutout in the dial, and the benefit of the bevel is it enlarges the aperture and therefore it reduces the shadow effect. So you don't get a permanent shadow cast on the day or the date complication. You can see Saturday the 8th is clearly legible with the white day wheel and the white date wheel with contrasting black letters and black Arabic numerals respectively. So day-date complication is correctly proportioned, easy to read, and I like the balance of the dial. It's a nice, clean, aesthetically pleasing dial, and the textured white dial adds interest with a metallic silver sheen to it. So flat sapphire crystal is correctly proportioned. It's got a bevel on the edge which projects above the flat stainless steel bezel, which is good. Top edge of the flat bezel is mirror polished to a flawless standard, and the edge of it is also mirror polished to a flawless standard. There's a chamfer which deletes the sharp edge, and it is very low profile. What I like about it is the flat sapphire crystal has a bevel on the edge which catches the light when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle. The other benefit of having a flat sapphire crystal versus double domed or boxed top hat double domed sapphire crystal is this piece is incredibly thin at only 10.1 millimeters, and they have fully maximised or benefited from this being powered by the caliber J800 Eco Drive, which is a slender solar powered Eco Drive caliber. So it's thin and it still is 100 meters, so it's beneficial. The case is octagonal, and one could say it's Gerald Genter inspired because, like the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, which is Gerald Genter designed, it has that octagonal 8-sided shape to the case, albeit it doesn't have an octagonal bezel, it has a flat circular bezel, but I do like the aesthetics of a 1970s Gerald Genter case shape. The octagonal shape is very aesthetically pleasing. Quality of the finishing to the Forza titanium case is stellar, and what I like about it is the top of the case is brushed satin finished, the edge, which is brutalist design with the angular integrated lugs, is also brushed satin finished, but in the centre section of the integrated case you can see we have this mirror polished bevel which adds interest, and it also complements the mirror polished centre section of the Y-link bracelet. We have a large bevel which runs the full length of the case, so on the transition and the edge of the case we have this large mirror polished bevel on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock sides. This does give the piece a higher end feel. Vertical brushed satin finishing to the flanks adds interest, and it has a beautiful lustre. Now I want to give credit to Citizen here, and one can clearly see the experience of the brand, because as I've detailed, Citizen were the first brand to make a titanium watch in 1970. So from 1970 to the present day in 2025, they have that experience of working with titanium. Titanium is a harder material to work with than 316L grade stainless steel. It's harder to machine, it's harder to brush satin finish, it's harder to mirror polish. So it is difficult to get a high quality luster to it, and it's also difficult to get a high quality mirror polish to it, unlike 316L grade stainless steel, which is softer and easier to work with. So I want to give credit to Citizen here, because the brushed satin finishing on the top of the case and the brushed satin finishing on the flanks is fantastic. Also the mirror polishing to the bezel and the transitions, the bevels on the flanks, is done to perfection. No flaws in it whatsoever. Looks good, it's aesthetically pleasing, deletes some of the meat, but also it deletes the sharp edges to the case. And this piece, to clarify, is entirely made from Forza Super Titanium. So the bezel, the case, the crown, the case back, the bracelet and the clasp are entirely Forza Super Titanium, which again adds value to the piece. I like the angular profile, and on the undercuts to the flanks we've got this large mirror polished bevel which deletes the sharp edge. This enhances comfort level and feel good factor, but also visually looks aesthetically pleasing because it's not a tall slab sided thick piece. It looks slender, and I'll show you the benefits of that in the wrist shot. It sits very low profile at 10.1mm thick. Let's look at the integrated bracelet in detail. So, mirror polished facet or bevel to the integrated centre section of the case. So, Y-links in the bracelet, so it's a flat link bracelet with Y-link profiling and mirror polished bevels to the centre section of the Y-links. Let's check the articulation. Articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Now, it doesn't give as much articulation as a female pouted end link because of its male end link proportion or formation, but it does have enough pivot to be comfortable to pull snug to the wrist. Doesn't have excess longitudinal, lateral, side-to-side or up and down play. It is okay, and I like that it doesn't feel stiff or kink. Bracelet is finished to perfection. Beautiful lustre to the Forza titanium, nice satin finishing to it, and I like the way the centre section of each of the Y-links has this mirror polished bevel, and it adds interest but also looks very aesthetically pleasing. Quality of the mirror polishing to each of the rectangle bevels on the edge of the Y-links is done to perfection. No sharp edge to the top edge or the low edge of the flanks. Flanks are brushed satin finish. Correct decision here, because had they mirror polished the flanks, it would have clashed with the flanks of the head of the piece. This is a fundamental that Citizen have got correct, so many low tier brands and low tier micro brands make the mistake. So I'll clarify what I'm referring to here. There is a clash usually. They'll mirror polish the flanks of the head of the piece, but then brush satin finish the flanks of the bracelet, or vice versa. They will brush satin finish the head of the piece, but mirror polish the flanks to the bracelet, and therefore one has a clash in the finishing of the flanks. They should always match. Brush satin finish flanks, brush satin finish flanks, versus mirror polish flanks, mirror polish flanks. Citizen have got it correct because the top side, underside and flanks of this Y-link flat link bracelet are brushed satin finished, but we do have the mirror polished centre sections to the bevels, which complements the integrated centre link of the head of the piece. So no sharp edges, doesn't pull arm hairs. Let's check the articulation. It's a fluid bracelet, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, that's the benefit. It's not sloppy, it doesn't have excess play, doesn't rattle, and one has to be magnanimous because this does use push pins versus screw pins. Now, I would prefer to see at this price point, €499, 1.2mm screw pins used, because that would tighten up the tolerances, and of course it's better quality. But subjectively, one could argue, well, push pins in the bracelet makes resizing easier, and subjectively some collectors prefer push pins versus screw pins just for the ease of resizing. It really comes down to your personal preference. Do you prefer screw pins, as I do, or do you prefer push pins, as other collectors do? But on a positive note, it's not a sloppy bracelet, and I like the aggressive taper. 23.7 at the widest point of the flared bracelet, down to 20. It's a good aggressive taper for a 39.5 head of the piece. Let's check the other side for continuity. End link articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, doesn't have excess play. Fluid bracelet articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, it's not sloppy, doesn't rattle, no sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks, doesn't pull arm hairs, and it works very well. I like the articulation, it's good. Let's look at the clasp. 2 button push clasp, as I've detailed, also made from Forza titanium. 2 micro adjustment holes are the minimum. I'd prefer to see 5. Now, this is the negative. It's a pressed Forza titanium internals. I'd prefer to see at this price point a solid milled Forza titanium internals to it. This is a clear production cost cutting measure in order to maximise profit margin per piece. One could be magnanimous about this being made from Forza titanium if it were below €100, and of course use the pressed stainless steel clasp, or alternatively pressed Forza titanium clasp. But at €499, this is the one main negative, the one production cost measure too far in order to maximise profit margin per piece. I'd like to see Citizen upgrade this, ideally to a ratcheting micro adjustment clasp, but at the minimum, solid milled Forza titanium. Now, the other thing is it's matte finish, rather like a matte bead blasted effect. They could have brushed satin finished it, or alternatively polished it to make it more aesthetically pleasing. Let's check the hinge pins. Left hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Does have slight play, but it's not excessive. Centre hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Does have slight play, but it's not excessive. Finally, right hand hinge pin, which is actually a spring bar, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Doesn't have excess play, so it is okay. No sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks, that's the benefit, and it is very thin and low profile. So on wrist, it does sit very snug to the wrist, and that's the benefit. It is very low profile, and they have done a good job of the finishing with regards to there's no sharp edges or no sharp corners, so that's good. Snap shut with a nice positive click. 2 button push triggers are heavily sprung loaded, so they feel reliable and robust. So let's test the push-pull crown execution. Again, push-pull crown is nail finish, nice large chamfer to it, mirror polished domed cap, and it is sterile. It's also made from Forza titanium, and they deserve credit because they could have used the production cost cutting measure of making the crown from 316L grade stainless steel. Because it's mirror polish versus matte finish, it does visually look like 316L grade stainless steel because it's silver rather than being an anthracite grey, but I can confirm the crown is also made from Forza titanium. Correctly proportioned, it's not too large, so when you flex the wrist, the crown doesn't dig into the back of the hand, that's the benefit. It's a push-pull crown with 100 metres of hermetic seal, which is good for a daily wear piece. So, as it's a push-pull crown versus a screw-down crown, in the closed position, we can pull it out, and then to the first click, when you rotate the crown clockwise, the day complication alternates to the next day of the month. Now, it's bilingual, and also red for SUN for Sunday is the only day of the week which is in red, but the other days of the week are in black and clearly legible. Now, what I like about it is the alignment is correct. The 3 letters are not too far to the left or the right of the aperture or date window, and they're not too high or too low. They're bang on the centre. So the 3 letters are not too far to the left or right, and they're not too high, too low. They've got the alignment correct, and it's bilingual, both in English and French, which is good. And I like the legibility. The 3 letters are sharp and crisp. The letters, the font they've used is high definition. It's not too thick or blurry, and it's very easy to cycle through the 7 days of the week. Clicks over with a nice positive click. Rotating the crown anti-clockwise advances the date complication, and again, the Arabic numerals are correctly aligned. Both the single and the doubles are bang on the centre. They're not too far to the left or the right of the aperture or window, and it's good. The font is sharp and crisp, it's high definition, it's not too thick and blurry. So day-date complication is very legible, and as I've detailed, I like the bevel which is cut around the aperture because this reduces the shadow cast on the day-date complication. This is good because it is a thick dial. It's a characteristic of eco-drive dials because they're solar powered, as I've detailed. The dials are thick, and of course they do often have shadows. This one does not have that problem because of the bevel around the day-date complication window. Works well. So pulling it out to the second click position hacks the movement, so it's possible to set the time precisely to the second with a Calibre J800 Eco Drive. So we're now in the time setting position, feels light. To put this into perspective, it feels lighter than a Miyota 8215 or 8315, and also feels lighter than a 9015 and 9039. Also feels lighter than a Miyota 2115 Quartz, and I like it. It feels balanced. It doesn't feel stiff, doesn't feel rough or gritty, and there's an almost immediate response. When you rotate the knurled crown, the pencil minute hand almost immediately responds. You don't need to take up a lot of slack. So less slack than an H35A, which you'll all be familiar with, less slack than a Miyota 2115, which is used in the Casio Duro, for example. That does have more backplay in the gearing. So it feels refined, feels reliable, and I like the minimal backplay, and it's a pleasure to set the time. Pushing the crown back in has a nice positive click, and you can see the second hand begins to tick around the dial once again, and 100 meters is good for a pushable crown, perfectly acceptable for a daily wear piece. Let's look at the case back in detail. Screw down case back, concentric CNC lathe tool machining to it, milled slots are deburred and chamfered, no sharp edges, and the circumference of it is mirror polished to flawless standard. It's engraved with Citizen and also the specification and serial number of the piece. I like the concentric CNC lathe tool machining to the Forza titanium, and again they deserve credit because they could have used the production cost cutting measure of using a solid 316L grade stainless steel case back, but it's not. This is made from Forza titanium, and you can see I love the way it reflects the light rather than reflecting it like a mirror polished case back. The benefit of this case back is it's very flat. We're not looking at a bubble back case back, and this is the benefit of the Calibre J800. It is a low profile eco drive calibre, so therefore it's thin, and Citizen have fully utilised it or maximised the benefit of it being a thin calibre because, as I've detailed, this is 100 metres but it's only 10.1 millimetres. It's a very thin piece, so perfectly flat case back. Now the benefit of it being flat is that this sits very snug to the wrist. This enhances comfort level and feel good factor, and it means that this integrated case sits very close to the wrist, very flat piece, and it's very good. Rather than having a bubble back case back making the case sit on top of the wrist, this makes the angular case angle around the wrist very well, which I'll show you in the wrist shots. So integrated lugs, and as you can see, the negative of this is it does limit one's strap options because it doesn't use standard spring bars, and of course that's difficult because it does have an 11.9 internal lug, and of course there aren't many straps which will fit this, as per a Tissot PRX, for example, which does have a plethora of options, rubber straps and leather straps. That's the negative I want you to be mindful of. 11.9 is an odd integrated internal lug width, and I prefer integrated lugs which have spring bars and alternatives such as the Tissot PRX, and it's nice to be able to alternate between the bracelet and a rubber or leather strap. But that's the way it is. But on a positive note, the integrated links are a good tight fit to the head of the piece. The underside to the head of the piece is concentric CNC lathe tool machine, beautiful lustre to it. Large mirror polished bevels on the undercuts to the flanks, as I've detailed. This deletes the sharp edges, and also the centre has a large mirror polished bevel which looks aesthetically pleasing, but again deletes the sharp edge. This enhances comfort level and feel good factor. So finishing to the case back is good, 100 meters, and a screw down case back is good. For example, they could have used the production cost cutting measure of a pressed on case back with 50 meters. They could have used the 316L grade stainless steel case back in order to reduce production cost per piece, therefore maximise profit margin per piece, but they didn't. They took the more expensive option of a screw down case back and also made it from Forza titanium. So that's good. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now just bear with me, I'll remove my Concord 40. Now I haven't sized the bracelets and I'm pleased to report this perfectly fits my 8-inch wrist without sizing. I can easily slide an index finger beneath the bracelet and clasp at all times, which is the correct sizing method because it allows for wrist expansion in warmer weather or when one is active. And although it only has one micro adjustment hole spare, this is on its maximum, so this would actually fit up to a maximum 8.5-inch wrist size. Now, to clarify, there are enough removable links on the 6 o'clock side and the 12 o'clock side of the bracelet to size this down to a minimum 6-inch wrist size up to a maximum 8.5 on the maximum position 2 of 2. So 6 to 8.5, good variation. Nice aggressive taper, I like it. 23.7 down to 20 is a good aggressive taper, and it needs it because this bracelet does need some meat. Had they used a 20 to 16 or a 22 to 18, which are the other industry standards, those bracelet sizes, those tapers would look undersized. This 39.5, due to the octagonal Genta style case, it does need some additional flair and meat on the bracelet to balance the head of the piece, because one has to remember Forza Super Titanium is 5 times harder but 40% lighter than 316L grade stainless steel. Now, if this were made in 316L grade stainless steel, I would say the 23.7 to 20 would be too much meat because the bracelet would be too heavy. But this is 40% lighter, therefore the bracelet does need some heft. Otherwise it would feel too light. The bracelet would feel too light for the head of the piece. As it stands, this is very well balanced. The 39.5mm head of the piece perfectly balances the 23.7 to 20 taper bracelet. Negatively, the clasp does feel very light gauge. It's pressed versus being milled. I think this could be further enhanced with a longer clasp made from milled Forza titanium versus pressed. And as I've detailed, 5 micro adjustment holes, or alternatively, ideally, a ratcheting micro adjustment mechanism. This clasp does suffice, but I think it could do with some more meat. That's the point I'm making, because the clasp does feel light gauge, the bracelet does feel like it's got enough meat, head of the piece is balanced. What I like about it is it's compact. 41.9. Now normally I would refer to 48 as being the sweet spot, because 48mm lug to lug is the perfect sweet spot for all wrist sizes, 6 to 7 and 7 to 8 inches. But this is an integrated bracelet piece with an integrated head of the piece. Therefore, it does need to be compact, because we do not have female putter end links here. We have integrated lugs with integrated Y-link bracelet. Therefore, it needs to be close to the case. The lug to lug needs to be shortened down to allow for the extra length on the mid portion of the integrated case and the Y-link, because it doesn't pivot as much. So in this case, I'm not going to be critical of the 41.9, which clearly is well below the 48 sweet spot. 2 things I like about this piece above all else. Number 1 is it's only 10.1. You can see the benefit. Very low profile, very flat, and it does pull very snug to the wrist. The case angles around the wrist very well, so it doesn't sit on top of the wrist like a thick slab of Forza titanium. The other thing I like about it is the lack of heft, and this is the main benefit of this being entirely made from Forza Super Titanium versus 316L grade stainless steel. This is only 87 grams. If this were made from 316L grade stainless steel in a 39.5 head of the piece with a 23.7 to 20 taper bracelet, it would be well in excess of 125 grams. 87 grams is very lightweight, and that is with a very long bracelet to fit even an 8.5 inch wrist. So incredibly lightweight piece, and it is deceptive, because if you're used to wearing stainless steel pieces, it does come as a pleasant surprise when you put this piece on wrist. It actually feels weightless on wrist. It feels invisible. And the fact it feels very well balanced as well as invisible means this enhances comfort level and feel good factor. Visually it does look very aesthetically pleasing, because we've got some nice contrast in finishing. Mirror polished bezel complements the angular bevels on the edge of the flanks, and then we've also got these mirror polished centre sections both in the integrated case but also the bevels on the Y-links. So we've got a mixture of brushed satin finishing for a beautiful lustre, but also mirror polishing, which does give the piece more of a dress watch aesthetic. So it's a versatile piece. You could wear it as a daily wear piece, but also potentially wear it as a dress piece due to its shiny mirror polished sections. So I like the finishing, and it also complements the textured white dial, which has this silver sheen to it. And of the 3 colour options, textured white, textured blue and textured green, this textured white is the most aesthetically pleasing. It's got a nice subtle sheen to it, so it's not as shiny as a sunray dial, it's not as shiny as a glossy enamel dial, but the textured dial does have a sheen to it, which is subtle, and it is very legible. The silver applied indices and the silver pencil handset, they do contrast very well. Now they're not black, so of course they don't contrast as well as black hands and black indices against a white dial, but due to it being textured, it has more of a matte finish versus glossy, and therefore the silver indices do actually contrast well. So it's easy to read, not too shiny and reflective, and I like the case finishing and I like the bracelet finishing. Beautiful lustre to the Forza Super Titanium. Quality of the finishing is good. No sharp edges to the flanks, so when it floats up and down the wrist, doesn't pull arm hairs, doesn't scratch the wrist. It's not sharp. Head of the piece is very snug. Now, needless to say, you'll know this from my previous reviews. 13mm and below is the sweet spot for a piece to easily slip underneath shirt cuffs if you wear business shirts. This is well below 13. It's only 10.1. 2.9mm, nearly 3mm below the sweet spot of 13. Very flat, very low profile. This is the benefit of a flat sapphire crystal versus a double dome sapphire crystal or a box top hat double dome sapphire crystal, which of course would be 2mm thicker and make this piece 12.1 versus 10.1. So Citizens have credit because they've made the correct decision by using a flat sapphire crystal with AR coating versus a double dome sapphire crystal. They've kept the thickness down to the minimum, 10.1, but it's still 100 meters. We're not looking at a 50 meter piece with a pressed on case back. It's 100 meters with a screw down case back. Excellent. So very low profile, very flat, angles around the wrist very well. 39.5 does look and feel like a 40 because it's only half a millimetre below 40, and due to the octagonal case with brutalist design, or one could say Gerald Genter inspired design, it does wear larger. So I would say it looks more like a 40, but doesn't feel like a 40 due to the lack of heft because it's only 87 grams. So it is suitable for a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, and it's equally suitable for a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches respectively. Does have enough wrist presence to satisfy, but however, you might dislike the lack of heft, which is ironic because it does enhance the comfort level and feel good factor, being 87 grams versus say 125 if it were made in 3160 stainless steel. But I appreciate some collectors like the feeling of heft because it gives a feeling of quality to a piece, and it's nice to feel that 125 grams. Now, for 39.5 head of the piece, 150 grams and below would be the sweet spot if it were made from 3160 grade stainless steel. But in titanium, 87 grams is very lightweight. It's a pleasant surprise. But it comes down to, do you like the heft, the quality feeling of a stainless steel piece at say 125 to 150 grams? Or do you actually like the feel good factor and the comfort level of a piece which lacks heft? This does feel invisible on wrist. It really does feel weightless. 87 grams is very lightweight. So that's what one has to consider. Aesthetically, it does have a more dull grey tone to the anthracite brushed satin finishing because Forza Super Titanium is more grey looking than the silver tone of 3160 grade stainless steel. So it's not as shiny as the silver finish to 3160 grade stainless steel. It does have a more grey look to it, and one could say it's more dull or more anthracite, more satin. But because they've mirror polished the bezel, they've mirror polished the bevels and also the flat portions and the bevels on the Y-link bracelet, it does make it shiny enough to add interest rather than just being completely grey and satin anthracite coloured. Also, the white dial with a silver sheen to it gives the piece more of a dress piece aesthetic rather than a daily wear piece. It doesn't look like a tool watch. That's the point I'm making, because we do have some shine to it. So I think they've got the balance correct between mirror polishing and also satin finishing, and the grey does contrast very well with the silver. So although it's not as shiny as a 3160 grade stainless steel piece, they have added some interest with the mirror polished centre sections to the Y-links and also the bezel and the bevels on the case. I think they've got the balance correct. 87 grams does feel very comfortable. It's just a shame that it doesn't have a milled clasp with micro adjustment. That's the only negative. But let's move on and do a lume test. So just bear with me. I'll put back on my Concord 40 and then I'll continue. So this uses BGW9 on the applied indices and the pencil hands. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged. Now, initially, there looks like there's good potency to the exciter, both in the applied indices and also the pencil handset. However, you can see there's a difference. We're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers on the pencil hands, which is stellar. I think we're looking at a maximum of 3 to 4 layers on the applied indices, which is a disappointment. And one cannot be magnanimous about this because, yes, it's a low tier piece, but we are at the upper end of the low tier. So to remind you, low tier is €0 to €500. This is €499 retail. And that is just on the cusp of low tier when it moves to high tier at 500 to 5,000. So we are on the cusp of mid tier, but we are still within low tier nonetheless. So €499, one cannot be magnanimous about 3 to 4 layers on the dial. At $499, it has to be 5 to 6 on the dial. It has to be 5 to 6 on the handset. There's no excuses. And it's a clear production cost-cutting measure in order to maximise profit margin per piece. Now, to clarify, Citizen are producing these Zenshin super titanium pieces in incredible volume. And therefore, there is no excuse whatsoever, because the cost of increasing production cost increase between 3 to 4 layers and 5 to 6 on the indices is negligible to Citizen. So you can see initially the potency of the exciter on the indices looks like it matches the hands, but you can now see exponentially with time the indices are going to very quickly fade. The hands are still holding the charge. The potency of the exciter is there. We're looking at a full 5 to 6, but the indices 3 to 4 maximum, definitely not 5 to 6. If this were below €100 in the low tier, one could be magnanimous, but at $499, definitely not. Has to be 5 to 6 on the dial, has to be 5 to 6 on the hands. The hands are excellent, they are stellar, you can see. But I want to see that performance on the indices, because you can now see the problem. The camera's struggling to autofocus because we've got 3 to 4 layers and it's fading rapidly to nothing. And as time goes on exponentially, it will quickly fade to nothing. So, disappointing. Hands are good. And I would say excellent performance, 5 to 6, which is the industry standard, but indices just aren't good enough. That's the truth of it. Right, so let's discuss the movement use, because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. So this is powered by the Citizen Calibre J800 Eco Drive, which is made in Japan. It's an in-house Citizen Calibre. It's solar powered. So day-to-day complication works well, as I've demonstrated, and it has hacking, so therefore one can set the time precisely to the second. Stated accuracy is plus or minus 15 seconds per month. So just think about that for a moment. That's not plus or minus 15 seconds per day or per week. Plus or minus 15 seconds per month is better than plus or minus 1 second per day. Incredible accuracy. So as it's solar powered, one doesn't need to change the battery. It has a power reserve of 8 months, which is 240 days. So when this piece is fully charged, either by natural light, for example placing the piece on a windowsill or in natural sunlight, or alternatively under ultraviolet light or simply fluorescent light indoors, it will be charged to 8 months or 240-day power reserve. So you don't need to charge it daily. It will still retain 8 months or 240 days of power reserve, even if you don't expose it to charging on a daily basis. The other benefit is it has a low battery indicator. So how does that work? Well, as you can see, the second hand ticks 1 tick every second, as one would expect. When the power reserve is low, it has the low battery indicator, and what happens is rather than ticking 1 tick every second, it ticks every 2 seconds. So when you see the second hand start to tick every 2 seconds, it indicates it's low on power and you need to charge it. And you can do that very simply by placing the watch on a windowsill, exposing it to sunlight outdoors, or simply putting it under ultraviolet light or fluorescent light indoors. So very easy to charge it back up to its 8 months or 240-day power reserve, but beneficial to have the lower battery indicator with this second hand ticking every 2 seconds versus every 1 second. So, excellent movement. Now, reliability is proven beyond question. Accuracy is proven beyond question. Plus or minus 15 seconds per month is stellar at this price point. I like it. I like everything about it. I like its 8-month power reserve. I like its plus or minus 15 seconds per month. Day-to-day complication works well. Hacking works well. It's the ideal choice. Now, above all else, what I like about it is how thin it is. Because, and Citizen have fully utilised it, this piece is only 10.1 millimetres. We're not looking at a pressed-on case back with 50 metres here. This is screw-down case back, 100 metres, but still only 10.1 thick. Very thin, low-profile piece, comfort level and feel-good factor, therefore have been optimised. So that's the benefit. It's lightweight, it's thin, and of course this piece can also be lightweight and thin as a result. It's only 87 grams. Fantastic. Plus or minus 15, 8-month battery life, solar powered. You never need to change a battery. That's the benefit. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meets 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price points. So, low tier piece, low tier is €0 to €500. We're at the upper end, €499 retail. I'm going to declare it's excellent quality, and I'm going to declare the value is okay. Now, the reason why I say the value is okay and not good or excellent is because of the one shortcoming. The 3 to 4 layers on the applied indices, wholly unacceptable. I cannot declare this good value, and I cannot declare it excellent value with that shortcoming. It needs to be 5 to 6 layers on the dial to match the 5 to 6 layers on the pencil hands. Then I would upgrade it. The other cost-cutting measure, which is a cost-cutting measure too far, is the pressed Forza titanium internals to the clasp. This needs to be a solid milled Forza super titanium clasp, and ideally not a pressed body. It needs to be solid milled and longer, alternatively micro adjustment. But nonetheless, this does not say to me €499. It says production cost cutting measure in order to maximise profit margin per piece at €499. So these are the things that downgrade it: clasp and also 3 to 4 layers on the indices. If they upgraded it to 5 to 6 on the indices and upgraded the clasp to a solid mill clasp, yes, then I would say excellent quality and excellent value. But as it stands, I'm going to declare it excellent quality but value as okay, because this does face some stiff competition. However, the things that add the value to this piece: Citizen does have brand heritage, that adds value. 5 years of international warranty adds value, because as I've detailed, low tier pieces normally have 12 months. High tier pieces such as Rolex at €10,000 plus have 5-year warranties. A 5-year international warranty does add value, and one has to factor that into the retail cost. So value is okay, but I think in order to increase the value proposition, we need 5 to 6 on the indices and an upgraded clasp with the V2 version. Yes, one has to appreciate Forza Super Titanium is expensive, and yes, one has to appreciate the J800 Eco Drive is an excellent caliber with plus and minus 15. Again, they also add value. So excellent quality, value is okay. I'm going to highly recommend it to you for consideration, but bear in mind the shortcomings. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Citizen Zenshin Super Titanium, reference AW0130-85A. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.